The prince, the curse, and the haircut. My wild journey to saving a kingdom. Okay, so imagine this. 1 minute, I'm just a regular hairdresser in a tiny village, and the next, I'm thrown into the middle of a royal crisis because the crown prince's hair, yes, his hair, is a total disaster. A magical mishap left him looking like a walking mess. And guess who's the one stuck fixing it? Spoiler, it's me. But fixing his hair, not the hardest part. Turns out, the real disaster is the prince himself, and maybe, just maybe, I'm the one who ends up saving him, and his kingdom. Stick around, because trust me, things get way messier than just a bad haircut. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. Chapter 1. When royalty hits the floor, literally. There are few things more satisfying than a well-done haircut. A snip here, a trim there, and you can see someone's entire world shift. Of course, most people don't get it. They sit in my chair and expect me to just chop off some dead ends and send them on their way. But they don't realize that it's not just hair. This is therapy. This is transformation. This is art. Of course, none of this was on my mind when I was knee-deep in a scissors and spray bottle battle with Lady Amelia, the Duchess of Grindlewick. Her idea of a modern haircut involved me turning her bouffant into something resembling an overcooked souffle. I knew it was going to be a disaster from the moment she walked in with that ridiculous feathered headband. But I had bills to pay, and a reputation to uphold. So I just sighed, and got to work. What is that supposed to be, Tessa? She screeched as I made a daring snip near the crown of her hair. You're cutting too much. I'm not here for a makeover. I demand more volume. I looked her straight in the eye, holding my scissors just inches from her scalp. Lady Amelia, if you want volume, I can offer you 2 things. A large stack of newspapers or a dramatic exit. Choose wisely. She didn't seem to appreciate my charm, but before she could retaliate with yet another shrill complaint, the door burst open, and in stepped a figure so polished, so pristine, that he might as well have stepped out of a royal portrait. And I mean that literally. A man with the coldest, most handsome face I'd ever seen stood in the doorway, his dark eyes scanning the room with an air of disapproval. I stopped mid-snip, and blinked. Maybe it was the way his dark cloak billowed with an unnerving stillness, or how his perfectly combed hair was just perfect, but something about him screamed royalty. Are you Tessa Bright? He asked, his voice deep and clipped. I looked him over. He was tall, taller than any man had a right to be, and his posture screamed I own this room. He stood there like a goddamn statue in a marble throne room. I wiped my hands on my apron and raised an eyebrow. I am. Can I help you? His eyes flicked over to Lady Amelia, who was now holding her breath, her hands trembling. I was sent to find you. I raised an eyebrow again. And why, exactly, would royalty need a small-town hairdresser like me? Lady Amelia gasped dramatically. Royalty? The man's lips barely moved as he spoke again. A hair emergency. I had seen my fair share of ridiculous requests. Lady Amelia alone was enough to fill a novella of royal disaster. But I couldn't deny the curiosity piqued inside me. You've got the wrong place, I think, I said, gesturing to my humble little salon. This is a one-chair show. Unless you're planning to turn this into some sort of kingdom-wide hair salon, I'm afraid we might not be equipped for your royal emergency. He didn't crack a smile. I'm Prince Keelan of the Kingdom of Velar, and I need you to come with me. Now. Chapter 2, The Crown, and the Comb. I should have known better than to argue with someone who looked like they'd just walked off a mountaintop in a perfectly tailored outfit. But then again, I wasn't exactly in the business of giving up my morning shifts for some high and mighty prince, who couldn't even look like he'd accidentally spilled coffee on his sleeve. Prince Keelan of Velar, I repeated slowly, letting the words roll off my tongue. I thought princes only existed in fairy tales, or court gossip. Do you want to help or not? He asked, voice still as icy as his posture. This was starting to feel like some sort of prank. Look, pal, I'm a small-town hairdresser, not your personal stylist. I'm still trying to get rid of this feathered monstrosity on my client's head. Lady Amelia gasped again, clutching her feathered headband as if I'd just declared war on it. Prince Keelan didn't flinch. You're the best hairdresser in the kingdom. Your reputation precedes you. The words best hairdresser hung in the air like the sweetest of sweeteners. But I wasn't about to be fooled. All right, fine, I said, rolling my eyes. What's the royal emergency then? Keelan took a breath, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something. Not emotion. Not exactly. But his shoulders relaxed, just a fraction. It's my hair. I stared at him. Your hair? Yes, my hair. And what's wrong with it? Too much volume? I asked, half mocking, half curious. His jaw clenched. It's not just any hair problem. It's complicated. Please. You'll understand when you see it. I tried not to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Fine. Let me get my things. Chapter 3. The Tangled Crown. When I arrived at the royal palace, I was half expecting someone to pull me aside and tell me this was all some ridiculous joke. But no, the massive gates creaked open, and I was ushered into the grandest hall I'd ever seen. I really hope you're not planning to make me a royal hair stylist full-time, I muttered as Keelan led me down a hallway filled with portraits of men who looked like they could bench press a castle. He didn't respond. The seriousness of his demeanor had me wondering if I should be preparing myself for something dramatic, but nothing could prepare me for what I saw next. Keelan sat in a throne-like chair in the middle of a huge room, surrounded by confused-looking servants. But it wasn't his royal presence that hit me first. It was his hair. It was alive. Well, not literally, but close enough. His hair was floating around him like it had its own set of intentions. The dark strands shifted colors, from gold to silver to blue, and then purple, whipping about in the air like it was caught in a permanent windstorm. I stared at him for a moment. So, what exactly is going on here? It's a curse, Keelan said, his voice cracking slightly as his hair briefly tried to tie itself in a knot. Ah, magic. I should have known. And I'm guessing you can't fix it with a blow dryer and a good product. He shook his head. No, it's tied to my emotions. The more I suppress them, the worse it gets. I blinked. So, your hair's an emotional wreck? Keelan's gaze darkened. Pretty much. I let out a laugh. Okay, so, what's the deal? What do you want me to do? Fix it? Yes, but there's more to it. He hesitated. It's not just a hair curse. It's meant to destabilize me. The curse is a distraction. Someone's trying to undermine the throne. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a royal disaster. This was a political disaster. All right, Prince Emotional Hair Disaster, I said, standing up and cracking my knuckles. Let's get to work. Chapter 4. Plot twists and more haircuts. As it turns out, fixing Keelan's hair wasn't just about getting him to feel something. It was about understanding what was going on behind the scenes. The more I worked on his cursed hair, which by the way, seemed to develop a preference for braiding itself when it wasn't getting enough attention, the more I realized there was something deeply wrong with the royal family. And it wasn't just Keelan's hair. In the midst of all this, I uncovered a conspiracy so twisted it made Keelan's hair look tame. Someone had cursed him intentionally. And the motive was far bigger than just the throne. Chapter 5. The Tangled Web. So here I was, in the middle of the royal palace, holding a pair of enchanted scissors that had been blessed by the royal court's most stubborn mage, by the way, and trying not to get swept up in the drama, which, let me tell you, was impossible. Keelan's hair was now doing the cha-cha slide around his head, shifting in color with every flick of emotion, and I was left holding the bag, or, in this case, the comb. All right, Prince Moody Hair, I muttered, carefully snipping at a particularly aggressive strand that had tried to turn into a bird. Let's talk strategy. Your hair's clearly possessed, so let's start there. What do we know about this curse? Keelan shifted uncomfortably in the chair, his fingers clutching the arms like he was trying to hold on to his dignity, or whatever was left of it. It's not a simple curse, he admitted. It's tied to my emotions, yes, but it's also meant to make me appear weak. I leaned back, scrunching my nose. Weak? You're the prince, right? You have armies, castles, and probably a magical army of hairdressers. Weak doesn't exactly come to mind. He sighed, running a hand through his wild hair, which immediately flared up to a fiery red. I raised an eyebrow. I'm assuming that's not a good sign? No, Keelan replied dryly. It's a signal, a sign that I've reached my limit. I blinked. You're saying your hair reads your emotions like a mood ring? Yes, and it's making a scene every time I feel anything close to vulnerability or frustration. Okay, so, we need to get you to stop feeling, I asked, as though I could just put that on my to-do list next to pick up groceries. No, he said quickly. I need to confront those feelings, not suppress them. That's the only way the curse will be broken. The longer I ignore it, the worse it gets. And at this point, it's become a distraction. A distraction from what? My duties. The throne. I have to be perfect, always. And the more I try to be perfect, the more the curse tightens its grip. Someone's trying to use this to make me look incapable of ruling. I looked at him closely, seeing for the first time the weight on his shoulders. The man was not just a prince. He was a prisoner to this image of control he had to uphold. A prisoner with a seriously unruly mane. And who exactly wants to make you look incapable? I asked, now genuinely intrigued. Is there someone in the royal court trying to, I don't know, overthrow you? Keelan hesitated, his face suddenly clouded with uncertainty. I suspect it's Lord Myron Drax, my most trusted advisor. He's been pushing for more progressive reforms, ones that would make the monarchy less absolute, and there have been rumors that he's been in contact with the rebels who want to overthrow my rule. I couldn't help but laugh. Oh please, your hair's gonna overthrow you? That's rich. Not my hair, Tessa, my perception. If the people think I'm unfit to rule, they'll turn against me. The hair is just a symptom of a larger problem. I sighed. Okay, so let's fix the hair first, and then we can go about finding out who's really pulling the strings here. Chapter 6. The Crown's Deepest Secret. As I worked, snipping here and smoothing there, I started to realize something strange. The more I trimmed, the less chaotic Keelan's hair became. It didn't quite fall into line, but it softened, like it was waiting for something, waiting for him to say something. The hair knew him. It was like it had a mind of its own, responding to every shift in his mood. But this time, it wasn't just about the hair. I paused, scissors mid-snip. Keelan, I have a feeling there's more to this than just your hair and your royal duties. Something you're not telling me. He froze. What do you mean? I mean, all this perfect prince business, all the pressure. It's got to be more than just your curse. You're hiding something. He stared at me, his eyes darkening. I don't know what you mean. I set the scissors down and took a step closer. Cut the crap, Keelan. I'm not some palace servant you can bully into obedience. If you're going to drag me into your life, at least be honest with me. You've got a secret that's eating you alive, and your hair's just the beginning of it. He exhaled slowly, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his facade. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of his silence nearly suffocating. There's a reason I'm so obsessed with perfection, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. When I was young, my mother, the queen, was killed in an accident. I was supposed to be the one to protect her, but I failed. My failure is what brought the curse on me in the first place. The revelation hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just his kingdom he feared losing. It was his own worth. And I'd been making jokes about his hair this whole time. I didn't want to fail again, he continued, his voice faltering. I've spent my whole life being groomed to be perfect because I thought if I was perfect, I could prevent history from repeating itself. I thought if I kept everything in line, kept my emotions in check, then I could protect this kingdom from falling apart. But it's all falling apart anyway. His hair flickered from gold to a soft, almost mournful gray. My heart twisted. You weren't meant to carry all that alone. Do you think I asked for it? His eyes locked onto mine, and for once there was no cold distance, just raw vulnerability. Do you think I wanted this crown, this burden? I never asked for any of this. For a moment, I saw past the prince, and saw the man, the human, beneath the crown, the one who had been raised to be flawless in a world that demanded perfection at the cost of his own happiness. I stepped closer, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. You're not alone anymore, Keelan. You've got more than just a curse on your shoulders. You've got me now, and I'm going to help you untangle this mess. Hair, emotions, and everything else. Chapter 7. The Royal Betrayal. Just as I thought we were making progress, disaster struck. The next day, the palace was in an uproar. Word spread that Lord Drax had been spotted meeting with the rebel leaders in secret, and that he had been orchestrating the entire conspiracy to destabilize Keelan's rule. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Drax had an ace up his sleeve. He had poisoned Keelan's hair. Not literally, of course, but through dark magic. He had cursed Keelan's hair to keep growing uncontrollably, channeling negative energy every time it touched anything it deemed tainted. It was no longer just a curse of bad hair days, it was a weapon. And who was the one tainted by this magic? Me. Chapter 8. Hair-raising conspiracy. The tension in the air was so thick, I could practically cut it with my scissors. And for the first time, I was beginning to wish I'd stuck with simple village cuts, nothing this complicated. But here I was, in the middle of a political maelstrom, surrounded by secrets, betrayal, and the strangest hair curse anyone had ever seen. Lord Drax's plot was unfolding before us like a grotesque piece of art. Not only had he managed to poison Keelan's hair, but he had also planted seeds of doubt in the court, making it seem like the prince couldn't handle the pressure. And now, with his magic-fueled hair growing out of control, it was clear that someone wanted him off the throne. I stared at Keelan, who now looked even more exhausted than he had earlier, his usual flawless, stoic demeanor shattered. His hair had morphed into a chaotic mess of tangled locks, glowing with a menacing golden light that made him look less like a prince, and more like a trapped animal. Don't look at me like that, Keelan muttered, running his hand through his hair in frustration. The strands only seemed to rebel more, growing faster. and now they were curling into knots that refused to be tamed. I'm not going to be the perfect prince everyone expects. I'm not. Keelan, stop. I cut him off, stepping forward. Your hair might be acting out, but that doesn't mean you have to. His gaze flickered to me, his eyes softening for a brief moment before the hair surged again. You don't understand, Tessa. This curse, it's part of me. I was never meant to rule. I'm a failure, and now my failure is going to cost me everything. I sighed, leaning down to untangle a particularly unruly strand. You're not a failure, Keelan. You just need to let go of this idea of perfection. You think everyone around you is perfect, but that's not how life works. It's messy. It's real. And the people who care about you, I care about you, aren't going to leave just because you're not perfect. He hesitated, clearly fighting the urge to pull away. It's not just about my hair. I can't rule a kingdom while I'm out here losing my mind over my emotions. I'm a prince, Tessa. If I show any weakness, it'll be the end of me. I rolled my eyes, tugging at another stubborn knot. Oh, please. The last time I checked, being a human wasn't a weakness. You're the one who's making this hard. The more you try to be perfect, the worse this curse gets. You don't get it, do you? His voice cracked, the stress finally showing. If I show weakness, people will use it against me. Drax is already scheming to take my throne. This hair? It's just a distraction. But what if it's enough? What if it's enough for the court to turn on me? I took a deep breath, staring into his eyes. The vulnerability in them was something I hadn't seen before. Not in the cold, calculating prince I'd met days ago, but in the man who was fighting a battle he couldn't win on his own. Keelan, I whispered, my voice soft but firm. You're not alone in this. And no matter how messed up your hair is, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to fix this. Together. Chapter 9. The heart of the curse. As the days passed, Keelan's hair continued to defy every attempt I made to tame it. The curse was a living thing, feeding off his emotions, growing stronger the more Keelan tried to suppress his feelings. The more he feared for his throne, the worse his hair became. I spent hours each day trying to calm it down, snipping, smoothing, and occasionally muttering curses under my breath as I watched it flare up like a wild animal. But no matter how much I tried, it felt like the root of the problem was deeper than just bad hair care. It wasn't until the evening of the royal ball, an event that Keelan had been dreading, that I saw it. The hair was trying to tell us something. Keelan was supposed to make an appearance in front of the entire court, a grand display of royal pomp and circumstance. But with every passing moment, his hair seemed to grow more chaotic, the colors shifting violently. When he turned toward the mirror, he looked less like a prince, and more like an untamed forest. Not again, he muttered, his hand gripping the armrest of the throne as the strands spiraled in all directions. I can't go out there like this. I stood behind him, my heart pounding. I could see it now. The curse wasn't just about power or control. It was about his fear of failure, his fear of being human. The more he tried to be perfect, the more his hair rebelled against him, as if to say, you don't have to carry this alone. Keelan, I said softly, my voice steady, you can't keep fighting it. You have to let go of the need to be perfect. This isn't about the throne, or the hair. It's about you. The curse was meant to tear you down, but you're stronger than this. He didn't respond immediately, but I could see the struggle on his face, the fear, the uncertainty, the pressure of a kingdom on his shoulders. And in that moment, it all clicked. You're not alone, Keelan, I said again, my hand gently brushing a strand of hair that had shifted to a violent shade of red. You can let go. I'm here. We're in this together. Keelan's eyes flickered, and for a brief, fleeting moment, his hair began to settle. The wild color swirled around him like it was testing the waters. It didn't change completely, but it stopped its relentless thrashing. And that's when I realized, his emotions weren't just affecting the hair. His heart had been tangled up with his fear of being vulnerable. The curse was a reflection of his own battle with self-worth. Chapter 10. The Hidden Betrayal. It didn't take long for us to discover that the curse wasn't just a magical accident. It had been planted by none other than Lord Drax, who had been scheming, not just against Keelan's throne, but against the entire kingdom. We were in the middle of our planning when the palace guards burst in, dragging a shaking servant behind them. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. Your Highness, she gasped, I overheard Lord Drax talking about how he was going to frame you for the theft of the kingdom's sacred relic, the Heart of Velar. My stomach dropped. What? The Heart of Velar? That's impossible. The servant nodded frantically. He plans to use the relic's disappearance to turn the court against you. He said if you were seen as unfit to rule, he could take control. It was all falling into place. Drax had been manipulating the court's perception of Keelan for months, using every little thing, like his cursed hair, as a tool to destabilize him. And now he was ready to make his move. But the twist, the part I hadn't seen coming, was when the servant revealed the final piece of the puzzle. The heart of Velar is hidden within the royal vault. But the key, she hesitated, looking at Keelan. The key is only accessible to someone of the royal bloodline. I froze, turning toward Keelan. You mean, the key to saving your kingdom is in your hands all along? Keelan looked at me, his eyes wide with realization. I have to do it. I can't run away from this anymore. It's time to face the truth. Not just for my kingdom, but for myself. Chapter 11. The Heart of Velar. The air in the royal vault felt cold, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to be uncovered. I could almost hear the whispers of history in the shadows, the voices of past rulers who had once walked these very halls, before betrayal, before secrets, before Lord Drax. As we made our way deeper into the vault, Keelan's pace quickened. His eyes were sharp, focused. For the first time, I saw a prince with resolve, not a man running from his own fear. His hair, still glowing with a gentle, golden hue, seemed less chaotic, the curse softening as he confronted the truth of his own strength. You know, I said, trying to break the tension as we approached the final set of doors, I never thought I'd be sneaking around a royal vault with a prince whose hair could be classified as a national disaster. Keelan shot me a wry grin, his shoulders relaxing. Don't get used to it, I plan on fixing the mess soon. Yeah, good luck with that, I muttered, eyeing the massive, ornate door ahead. I think your hair might be more magical than you realize. He chuckled, then turned serious again. We're getting close. The key, it's in my bloodline. If I unlock the heart of Velar, the kingdom can be saved. But, he paused, his voice trembling slightly, the heart can only be wielded by someone who's truly worthy. It's a test of the ruler's heart, not just their lineage. I frowned. That sounds ominous. And terrifying. How do we know if you're worthy? He looked at me, his gaze both fierce and vulnerable. By facing what I've been running from, I swallowed hard. It wasn't just the fate of the kingdom on the line. It was Keelan's own redemption. This wasn't just about the throne anymore. It was about him finding the courage to believe in himself. We reached the door, and Keelan placed his hand on the ancient stone. It glowed briefly, then the door swung open with a heavy creak, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, shimmering light. And in the center of the room, sitting on a pedestal, was the heart of Velar, a crystal heart the size of a fist, glowing with an inner fire. Keelan stepped forward, his hand outstretched, but as soon as his fingers brushed the heart, a sharp pain coursed through him. He staggered back, clutching his chest, and I rushed to his side. Keelan, what's happening? I gasped. It's the test, he said through gritted teeth. The heart, it's judging me. My worthiness. His hair flared up, shifting colors wildly, as though it too was reacting to the turmoil inside him. The curse had been tied to his self-doubt all this time, and now it was clawing at him with a vengeance. You can do this, I said firmly, placing my hand on his shoulder. You don't need to be perfect, Keelan. You just need to be you. The glow in his hair softened, as if my words were reaching him. He closed his eyes, his breath shaky, then slowly reached for the heart again. This time, when his hand touched the crystal, there was no pain. Instead, the heart glowed brighter, and a warm light filled the room, casting shadows that danced like fireflies. The curse, his doubts, everything he had been holding onto, seemed to dissolve into the light. A voice, ancient and powerful, echoed through the chamber. Keelan Velar, son of the late Queen Seraphine, you have faced your fear and your heart. You are worthy. I blinked, stunned. Did it just talk? Keelan stood straighter, his face a mask of awe. I think it did. The heart of Velar pulsed with energy, and the light around us intensified, swirling like a storm. But this time, instead of chaos, it was a calming force. The hair that had been tormenting Keelan for so long began to settle. Its colors slowly shifted from fiery red and angry gold to a deep, royal black, a symbol of his strength, of his acceptance of his own imperfections. I did it, Keelan whispered, looking down at the heart in his hands. I'm worthy. I smiled, relieved and proud. Told you, you just had to stop running from what makes you, well, you. But just as I thought we'd reached the end of our struggles, a chilling voice echoed through the chamber. Well, looks like the little prince has managed to pass the test. It was Lord Drax. His form appeared at the entrance, flanked by a handful of guards. But you're too late, Keelan. The kingdom's already on the brink of collapse. There's nothing you can do to stop it. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. You've been behind all of this, haven't you? You poisoned his hair, turned the court against him, and manipulated everyone. Why? Drax smirked, stepping into the room. His eyes locked onto the heart of Velar. It's simple really. A kingdom led by a weak ruler is a kingdom ripe for the taking. I knew Keelan wouldn't be able to bear the weight of it all, and when I heard about the heart's trials, I saw an opportunity. One of us had to be in control. Keelan stepped forward, his expression hardening. You're not going to get away with this, Drax. Whoa, but I already have, Drax said, his eyes glinting with malice. The people have already lost faith in you. The heart, it's a relic, a symbol of a bygone era, and when you fail to protect it, when the kingdom falls to ruin, it will be my time to rise. Before I could react, Drax raised his hand, and the room seemed to pulse with dark energy. A shadowy figure materialized beside him. A monstrous, twisting form that seemed to be made entirely of shadows. My heart raced. Keelan, get back. But it was too late. The figure lunged, and in that moment, the heart of Velar flickered, its light dimming. Chapter 12. Shattered Illusions. The room plunged into darkness as the shadowy figure collided with Keelan, knocking him to the ground. The heart of Velar flew from his grasp, spinning across the room as if it too was fleeing from the chaos. I rushed to Keelan's side, my heart hammering in my chest. Keelan, no. He was on his knees, struggling to get up. But the shadow figure loomed over him, pressing him down with a suffocating force. Keelan, I shouted again, pulling at the figure's arm. But it was like trying to move stone. You're stronger than this. You are worthy. The prince's eyes met mine, pain flashing across his face. I don't think I can. That's when I realized something. The heart of Velar wasn't just a test of Keelan's strength, it was a reflection of his belief in himself. The moment he had doubts, the curse had returned. The moment he gave in to the weight of his fears, Drax had won. But if I could remind him of one thing, the truth we had discovered together, maybe, just maybe, we could break through. I grabbed the heart, which had rolled to my feet. It was still warm, still glowing faintly, but it lacked its full power, and in that moment, I knew what I had to do. Tessa, Keelan whispered, his voice full of pain. It's too late. I shook my head. No, it's never too late. I held the heart above my head, channeling everything I had learned, about him, about us, and about the strength that came from standing together. And with that, I placed the heart back into his hands. The power of the heart surged, and everything around us shifted. Chapter 13. The Final Reckoning. The room exploded with light. The heart of Velar pulsed in Keelan's hands like a beating heart, radiating a warmth that pushed back the shadows and the cold. The shadowy figure that had been pressing down on him staggered back, as if burned by the very light that now enveloped us. Drax, standing in the corner with an arrogant smirk still plastered on his face, growled in frustration. You think you can just take it back? You really believe a trinket like that will save you? I felt the pulse of the heart deepen, and the light from it intensified, wrapping around Keelan like a shield. It's not about the heart, Drax, Keelan said, his voice steady, though his body still trembled with exhaustion. It's about who I am. And I'm not the same person I was when you first started this scheme. You were always a weakling, Drax sneered, stepping forward. His hands twitched with dark energy. And now you've exposed yourself as one. You think this light will stop me? Enough! Keelan's voice rang out like a crack of thunder. His eyes locked with Drax's, filled with a calm fury I hadn't seen before. Before Drax could respond, Keelan raised the heart above his head. The light from it flared up, swirling around us like a cyclone. For a moment, it was blinding, the power of it suffocating. And then, everything stopped. The light dimmed, revealing the scene in the royal vault. The shadow figure was gone. Drax stood frozen in place, his hands twitching, but unable to move. I took a step toward him, heart pounding. What happened? Did we win? Keelan's breath was ragged. His face looked pale, but there was a sense of calm settling into his features as if the burden he had carried for so long had finally lifted. I don't know, Keelan said, his voice soft but determined. I think I've finally let go of everything. He staggered slightly, and I rushed forward to steady him, my hand on his arm. You don't have to do this alone anymore, I said quietly. We're in this together, Keelan. Always. Keelan gave me a small smile, though his eyes were still filled with exhaustion. I think you've been my strength more than I've ever been yours. I couldn't help but laugh softly, shaking my head. You've been strong the whole time. You just needed to see it. But before we could share another moment of relief, a cold laugh rang out from behind us. Drax. He hadn't been fully immobilized after all. He stood there, his eyes glowing with dark energy, his smirk twisted into a sneer. Do you think this is over? He said, his voice low and venomous. You've won a battle, but not the war. The heart may have recognized you as worthy, but the throne, the kingdom, it's mine. His hand shot forward, and a surge of dark magic exploded from his fingertips. The force sent Keelan and me stumbling back, slamming into the stone walls of the vault. I cried out as the blast hit, the air crackling with energy. My vision blurred, and I struggled to regain my balance. Keelan was on his feet again, his hand gripping the heart, but the magic that Drax wielded seemed to be pushing us back. Every step we took toward him just leading to more darkness and destruction. You have no idea what you're up against, Drax taunted, advancing. You think you've overcome me? But I've only just begun. Keelan's grip tightened on the heart. His gaze locked with mine. And in that moment, I saw something different in his eyes. There was a fire there now. A fire that had been lit not by his royal duty, but by something deeper. I'm done running from this, he said through gritted teeth. I've spent so much time trying to be perfect, trying to please everyone, trying to prove something to myself. But I'm not going to let him win. Not now. Not ever. I nodded, my hand still gripping his. I'm with you, Keelan. Always. With that, Keelan turned his gaze toward Drax, and the air seemed to shift. His posture straightened, and for the first time, I saw the prince I had only heard about in rumors, the strong, unyielding ruler who wasn't afraid to fight for what he loved. Drax, Keelan said, his voice calm but unwavering, you've already lost. You thought you could break me, that you could make me doubt myself, but you were wrong. Drax recoiled, as though Keelan's words were a physical blow. What are you saying? I'm saying you've been playing the wrong game all along, Keelan replied. It's not about the throne. It's not about magic. It's about the people. It's about us. And I won't let you tear this kingdom apart, because of your selfish greed. In that moment, the heart of Velar flared to life again, brighter than ever before. The magic, once a protective force, now seemed to lash out, the light cutting through the darkness like a blade. Drax let out a strangled cry, his hands raised in futile defense, but the magic of the heart overwhelmed him. His form began to shift, melting into a shadowy mist that evaporated into the air, leaving nothing behind but the faintest trace of his lingering presence. The room went quiet. Keelan stood, his chest heaving, the heart still glowing faintly in his hands. His hair, now settled into a dark, rich color, no longer seemed to writhe with the same chaotic energy. He was at peace. I walked over to him, cautiously, unsure if the battle was truly over. Did we win? Keelan's eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd met him, they were filled with something that wasn't fear or doubt. They were filled with certainty. Yeah, he said softly, holding the heart close. We won. Together. Chapter 14. A New Beginning. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Drax's betrayal was exposed, and his plot to take the throne crumbled. The kingdom rallied behind Keelan, realizing that he was not the cold, distant ruler they had feared, but a prince who had found his strength in facing his own imperfections. But more importantly, the curse on Keelan's hair, his symbol of self-doubt, had broken. With the heart of Velar restored, the kingdom was saved. And with Drax gone, there was nothing left to stand in the way of Keelan becoming the ruler he was always meant to be. As for me, I returned to my humble shop in the village, though not alone. Keelan insisted on making a regular trip to check on my work. Though his hair was no longer a disaster, he still couldn't seem to resist asking for my opinion. And while we still bickered about his hair from time to time, there was an unspoken understanding between us now. He wasn't the perfect prince anymore, and neither was I, but we didn't need to be, because together, we had everything we needed. The end. Keelan and Tessa went through some wild ups and downs together. If you had to face an impossible challenge like they did, who would you want by your side? Someone who's completely calm under pressure, or someone who's got your back with bold and unpredictable ideas? Let me know in the comments.